conflicts between different faith groups, solving the Israeli-Palestinian problem, how to clear the baggage of past pain and hurt. The Palestinian narrative is, we are the most persecuted people in history, we are the most suffering. The Jewish narrative is the same. No, we are the most persecuted and hurt, and like pogroms for centuries. How do you solve that when they're both weeping at you and saying we're in pain? Well, that's the intellectual challenge for our generation. That's what the Leonardos of tomorrow need to work on. But they need a base, right? They need an infrastructure. It came to me in a blinding flash of light in Amboise, sitting at the tomb of Leonardo. At the moment, the war inventors have the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. It's the largest building in the world dedicated to military defense and weapons of mass destruction. Its budget, it pumps out contracts to academia, scientists, engineers, technologists, all over not just the States, but actually even all over the world. It pays for research into war. And it's spending billions of dollars of, American people giving money to it. If you think of it on an energetic level, you could see the Pentagon almost like a kind of black hole, sucking the wealth of the planet in, and what comes out is weapons, tanks, new bombs, next generation, battle guns, whatever. And then, of course, I'm not even mentioning the black ops. There are parts of the Pentagon that are doing stuff that even the president doesn't know about. And then there's all the military intelligence stuff that it's funding, like the NSA and things, that Snowden and people have tried to say, hey guys, do you know what these people are doing? Now, they're doing it because it's a job. It's their livelihood. What I'm saying is, how are we going to cap that? If you see it like a kind of, energetically, like a sort of black hole, that all the wealth and energy of good people all over the planet are being sucked into. And it's interesting, isn't it? The accountants can't even find the audit trail for billions of the money that's gone into the Pentagon. Just before 9/11 hit, there was several billions went missing, do you remember? And recently, another load of billions have gone missing. So the Pentagon is literally a black hole in everybody's garden, chewing up all the love energy that we should be using for peace. So I'm suggesting a very radical idea. I got this download from Leonardo's soul, so to speak. What we need to do is design a Department of Peace to cap the Pentagon. And this is an architectural puzzle. Leonardo would have loved this. So we've set up the Leonardo da Vinci Peace Prize, right? The Pentagon is a 5-sided structure in Washington, D.C., which is a magical thing, a pentagon. John Dee used them, they're esoteric things. The Pythagoreans love pentagons. But a nonagon is a 9-sided figure. A nonagon brings the power of the muses and the power of all the mystical significance of the number 9, right, which is hugely important. I'm suggesting we build a nonagon literally on top of the Pentagon. See, the Pentagon's quite a flat-roofed and low building, right? It's structurally very possible to build a nonagon structure on the top of the 5-sided Pentagon structure. And it would be as high as the Pentagon is, and it would be as robust and well designed. This is the prize, the architectural firm that designs this. The other half of the prize goes to the lobbying firm that gets it passed through Congress as a bill by a president that wants to be seen as wise and a good president, right, who goes down in history as the one that built the Nonagon. What would the Nonagon do? Well, it would be the Department of Peace for the US. Its job would be to solve wars non-violently. It would send out mediators. It would send out religious specialists who could go to Syria and make these people sit together and drink coffee and come up with a peace settlement. It would have a budget equal to the Pentagon, right? So because America, I'm addressing now, a new kind of America that's trying to come through, would realise that investing in the Pentagon alone is a fool's errand. It's going to lead to continual wars because the Pentagon has an inbuilt bias towards perpetuating militarism around the planet. So by investing in the Nonagon on the same budget as the Pentagon, it would be solving the conflicts. So in a sense there'd be rivalry between the Pentagon and the Nonagon, and that's absolutely fine. But the Nonagon would have priority the Pentagon would only be allowed to send bomber squadrons and drop bombs on countries if the Nonagon had failed to reach a peace settlement. That's the Leonardo da Vinci Peace Prize. We will give it to the architect and the lobbying firm that designs and starts to build the Nonagon. This might take a few years, folks, but I hope it is a project that will be advanced rapidly because the whole planet needs it. And I'm speaking not just for the peace druids of Europe and Britain, but indigenous peoples around the world. We cannot go on suffering this ridiculous overspend on militarism. The warriors have to be brought back under control of the elders. In the civilized tribes of Deganawidah and his friends, the warriors occasionally would have to go into action if there was something terrible, a fate coming to attack the tribes. But they only went in with the elders' permission, and only after every avenue of peace had been solved and explored. And when it was time to stop, they stopped. They were obliged to put their arms down. And that's how it worked in the Celtic world of the Druids. The Druids were the elders who authorised the warriors when to go in and then when to stop. And what I'm saying as the peace druid of Europe is it's time for the warriors to stop now. And we have to cap that Pentagon, okay? And their equivalents around the world. You've got the same in Britain, Ministry of Defence, in France, in Paris, in Canada and so on. The military of the planet are now put on notice, as of this talk, to the world parliamentary religions that, their time has come. They have to give way to the elders, the peace elders. And therefore we have to get our act together. And that means everybody on these boxes, and I'm addressing you whether you're a Sufi or a Kabbalist or a Buddhist or a Hindu or a pagan or a Christian evangelical or Catholic, the light blue are the Christian ones, my Christian brothers and sisters. I'm an Anglican myself, but I regard myself as a member of the Universal Church, the Gnostic wisdom church that is impossible to label, the one that Christ actually intended his followers to follow. And, I believe that Christ is part of this project of peacemaking. That was surely what his intention was. I will finish now with just one last thing I want to say. And this is a call to a kind of higher level consciousness, if you want. All the legends and myths of the different religions. Pause a minute. They talk of a time when the Golden Gate will be opened in the eastern wall of Jerusalem, and there will be a kind of, the return of the messianic moment. The gate has been shut since the 1500s by order of the Ottoman Sultan. The Jewish people say that gate will be open when the Messiah comes in. They're still waiting. The Christians say that gate will be open when Jesus comes back. He'll open it. The Muslims say that gate will be open when Muhammad comes back with Jesus. They'll open it. What I'm saying in the Golden Gate Project is that we collectively, the spiritual elders of the planet, of all faiths, all the people in Toronto together, all the elected elders and overseers of each faith tradition, collectively make a determination to open that gate collectively, right? Because that collective messianic consciousness is now back with us. Buddhists call it the Maitreyantic consciousness. The Zoroastrians call it the Seoshantic consciousness. It's that which can speak to the wholeness of things, right? Instead of the parts. We're broken up like Osiris. We're in the stage of the deity's been shattered into pieces. Only the power and energy of Isis can reassemble that shattered corpse. It's a bit like the tragic killing of the Saudi Arabian intellectual Khashoggi, who was literally dismembered. I've made a link between that horror and the Osiris destruction. That symbolises where we're at. And these fanatical monotheisms, as in the Wahhabi tradition, in its misunderstanding of what's needed, think that killing people in that way is ethically okay. Sorry, it's not. What we should be doing is remembering our commonality and our universality. Once we do that, once that Seoshantic consciousness re-emerges, then the collective Messiah can open that gate together, all the elders. And I have a vision that we will open that gate, right? We will build a peace tent on the golden, through the Golden Gate on the peace mount, and pilgrims from every faith and none can then come and be there for their prayers. That hill doesn't belong to Judaism, it doesn't belong to Islam, it doesn't belong to Christianity. It belongs to everybody. And it belongs to the indigenous primal people who built Jerusalem in the first place. It belongs to the Enochian consciousness, out of which Islam, Christianity and Judaism all emerged, right? It belongs to the indigenous peoples of that region. And, I'd love to see the World Parliament of Religions gather there in a few years' time. Once we've got the Golden Gate open, it would have to be done with the permission of the Jerusalem authorities, of the Israeli government, and of the Palestinian government, because it's on the Eastern Wall. It's within the region that would probably become part of the Palestinian East Jerusalem capital. And I would love to see that celebrated if we can get a two-state solution. And both Israel and Palestine would then sign a treaty declaring non-violence towards each other. I have so many friends in Israel, I have so many friends in Palestine. They're incredible people, both of them. There's no reason why they should be fighting. This is just the Pentagon types stirring it up because they like their weapons deals. And Netanyahu and the Likud government are just like tools of that Pentagon consciousness. They have to give way to the Nonagon consciousness, which then affirms love, unity, the rebirth of the goddess traditions, and the women who on the planet are suffering most from war. Right, so 50% of the planet don't want these wars going on, and they want a peace solution in our time, in our lifetimes, to this two-state problem in Israel-Palestine. Once we do that and we get the Golden Gate open, just think the difference of the energy on the planet. So I'm giving you some quite big tasks in Toronto. Apologies for this, but it's got to be done. Firstly, let's get the Golden Gate open, the faith leaders of the planet, that's our mission. Secondly, let's get the Nonagon built on top of the Pentagon. And thirdly, let's advance this interfaith ecumenical spiritual scholarship, whereby these esoteric texts, like the Book of Enoch and the 3 books of Enoch and the equivalents, are brought out so that in every church around the planet, every Christian Bible suddenly has the books of Enoch in them, as they should, in the synagogues and in the mosques. These commentaries I've done on these 3 books of Enoch, if they were available in each mosque, synagogue and church around the planet, honestly, those 3 religions would be taken out of the equation as warmongers. And wouldn't the indigenous spiritual elders of the planet be happy at that? Because at the moment they're fighting for hegemony. It needn't be happening, Anyway, that's a report, an update from the work going on here in Europe. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I have a dear friend who was going to be in Toronto, a Jain elder, Dr. S.L. Gandhi, who I know was due to speak about the Jains. At the very last minute he had a heart attack, so he didn't make it either. But I know that he would have supported what I'm saying here today. I've worked very closely with the Jain traditions and have written with them the Jaipur Declarations, which I commend colleagues to read. I'm sure there are Jains there, so I send my blessings. Acharya Tulsi, who I met and blessed my work, was one of the great non-violence campaigners in the history of the 20th century. And essentially what I'm saying here is applying that principle of non-violence, ahimsa, to intellectual violence, because we've got these warring ideologies and philosophies. Ahimsa requires that we make peace, and that requires intellectual concessions. I do not have all the truth. That's it. Basic humility position. Your truth is also valid and maybe different to mine. Let's see how we can adjust and correlate to each other. And and just to say that when Piro of Elis went to India with Alexander the Great, who was a disciple of Aristotle, he met some Jains and had some discourse with them. They were called gymnosophists, naked philosophers. Historically, this is the case. And Piro of Elis came back from India and launched skepticism in the history of Western thought. He was the first skeptical philosopher, right? And what he meant by that was you suspend judgment on things you don't really know. We can't absolutely know, is there one God or are there many gods, like in Hinduism or Druidry? We can't absolutely know until, I suppose, we ask the gods or God. We'll find out, as John Hick, the philosopher, said, it's the eschatological verification principle. When we die, we find out, right? And the evidence, I think, seems to point to, well, it's both and. There are many forms of deity, but they appear to be interconnected and unified by some absolute consciousness, right? But anyway, the important thing is that the suspension of judgment, that intellectual humility, came into the West, the European skeptical tradition of philosophy, which Cicero and much later David Hume and other skeptics developed. What they don't realise is that the Jains pioneered it. And the Jains pioneered it to reach enlightenment. Western thinkers like, skeptics, they just do it to kind of diss everything and say, well, there's no proof for this. Some sort of traditional academic philosopher listening to me talk say, well, Daffen's just off on one. There's no proof for anything he's saying. Well, of course, that's what I call, minimal skepticism. Deep skepticism, as practiced by the Jains, is you're skeptical even of your nihilism and your skepticism. And you come back to a place of faith, as Kant said. So you make a leap out of skepticism into enlightenment. And that was the purpose of the Jain Mahavira path. By practicing suspension of judgment, the many-sidedness of views, Anikantavada, you realise that all the views are actually part of the architecture of collective enlightenment. So in each box, think of it like a jewel twinkling. I'd love to see like a 3D version of this. Each one is like a light with its own particular veracity, its own particular wisdom. And then as we walk through them, you can imagine like a sort of 3D computer game, right? You receive that download of enlightenment for that time and place, which was valid. So Platonic wisdom, yes, down here, this box. Awesome, amazing for its time. Plato was someone who'd visioned and seen and glimpsed the good. He was an initiate of the Eleusinian mysteries. He'd glimpsed the one. But, we walk on through and we come down to the different forms of, Zoroastrianism or the Mithraic tradition, even the Freemasonic tradition where you go like Goethe into the mysteries. All of them bring their own enlightenment experiences. And why I like the Jains is because they say without non-violence, the enlightenment is bogus. And so I'm really just putting this as a footnote to my sharing that's why to me ahimsa, non-violence, is the test case. Any Messiah that turns up and starts preaching war and violence and victory for my tribe or my people over against yours is not the universal, authentic, say, Ashantic consciousness that Mahavira and the other authentic spiritual elders of the planet are calling for. And unless we can actualize that higher form of Anekantavadic skepticism, right, of universal peacemaking and ahimsic energy, we won't get the Golden Gate open. So I'd leave you with those thoughts to mull on. And I hope that you found this sharing of value. And I give my love to Canada, to Toronto, to the people of that region, to the spiritual elders of the planet that are there assembled, and blessings and good fortune on your work. Thank you.